Hi guys, I'm going to start this video with something a little bit boring really, which is refactoring. So refactoring is something that I've kind of got a bit of a love-hate relationship with. On the one hand, I do love to do it because it makes my code cleaner, easier to read, easier to maintain. But on the other hand, sometimes I hate it because sometimes it can be really difficult to do. If I'm starting with code which has been badly organized, which is the reason for refactoring, it can be tricky. So in the last video, as I was going through implementing the stuff with the clock and the new kind of like night to day cycle, I noticed that this class is getting a bit bigger. So this is my main scene class, which I have very lazily named scene 1 because I really couldn't think of a better name. And one thing that I noticed is I had a lot of stuff in here to do with the nightmares, which is makes sense, right? Because this is a game about soothing nightmares. So I've managed to put that into a new class called the nightmare system. Um, but then I've noticed kind of another problem. So in my scene 1, there's something else that I want to get rid of. If I go to my load content, so this is where all the various assets are loaded. So you've got sound effects here, a couple of textures for like the background graphics. And then I've got a whole bunch of stuff here to do with text. You know, the clock text, you've got the game over text, the score text, and it's like, I feel like this stuff, this text stuff is littered throughout the code. So where is it? Probably in the yeah, you got a bunch of stuff here in the update where it's updating like the clock and everything, and then also in the drawer as well. I've got some stuff in there, and I just feel like I don't really want this class to have this kind of text stuff in there. And so I thought, really, maybe what I need is something which is like a kind of a heads up display. And that has all of the sort of feedback elements. Now, really, this is starting to get into UI code, and I haven't even thought about that. I haven't started that yet, but then maybe that's something I need to start thinking about. So, what I thought of is maybe I'll just do a class in this game, which has just got those kind of text elements, so like the score, the clock, and so forth. But then that now gives me a problem with the nightmare system that I just did, because what I did here was I gave it the nightmare meter. Now, the nightmare meter is actually that, if I just play the game, the nightmare meter is this thing over here. So this is the part which is like, it's basically a progress bar. It's like a threat meter in a way. And this is something that I think I'm probably going to want to abstract out. I think I need to start abstracting out various little components that I'm likely to use in various games. But what I've got here is I've got a score, I've got a clock, and I've got a meter. So this is what I would call like the heads up display. So really, I kind of want that in its own class. And it really makes sense because a nightmare system for managing the nightmares, that shouldn't really be dealing with graphics. And if I go down to the draw function of this, all it does is draw the meter. So I think I need to refactor again and start putting visual elements in one thing, logic elements in another thing. And this is something which, again, I'm going to kind of carry forward into my next game. So something that I'm kind of struggling with, hang on, let me just turn my screen off for a minute. So something that I've been struggling with in general is as I get towards the end of the game, because I'm getting to a point where I could just stop and say, oh, this is done. I'm feeling this tendency to want to just get it done, to finish it off. I'm part of that is like today is my last day off before I've got to go back to work tomorrow, and so I kind of want to get it done so that I can like start the new week thinking about a new game, and I don't want this hanging over me for another week. But on the other hand, I know that that's going to hurt me in the future because otherwise I'm just going to leave these games kind of unfinished. So like with my Pong game, obviously the very first one that I tried to do, it was just a complete mess because I didn't know what I was doing, and that's why I had to start over. But when I started it over, I didn't finish it. I just got the bare minimum that I needed to say, right, this is a game of Pong. I didn't do things like the Powerballs and the various kind of upgrades to the AI that I tried to do in the first version. And I was just kind of like almost desperate to be finished with it and to move on to the next game. And I can feel that same kind of pull now. It's like I've really enjoyed making this game actually, but there's still that part of me that's like, it's nearly done, it's nearly done. Just get it finished, just finish it, move on to something new. But I'm trying to resist that. I think it's a mistake, and I think spending a bit of time towards the end to do stuff like this refactoring and think, okay, how could I do this better? What could I abstract out to put into another game? What am I going to be able to reuse? What kind of little polish things could I do to make the game better? I think it's probably worth spending that extra week. When I say a week, it's not like I'm full time or anything. I've only got limited time to work on my games. But to me, I tend to think in weekly increments. So yeah, I think I'm probably going to be spending another week on Orbarella. But it's just one of those things. I'm only on my second game, but I feel like I'm already struggling with this, and I feel like it's something that I'm going to come up against again and again and again, just wanting to kind of get it done. And I'm the same when I play games. I can spend ages when I first start with a new game, like figuring out how to play it. I mean, when I started playing Stardew Valley, I must have restarted it God knows how many times, 'cause I thought, oh no, I've done it wrong, I've done it wrong. And then it's the same when I'm playing like a big RPG, like one of the Bethesda games, like Fallout or Skyrim or something. But then as I get towards the end of the story, I'm like, I just want to get it finished now and then move on to the next game. So I don't know, what it is about me that wants to do that. I don't know if other people have that same problem, but I feel like it's something I need to fight that urge and actually spend the time doing the boring stuff like the refactoring, because it is going to help me overall in my game dev journey. Yeah, so that's basically all I wanted to say about that. So I started doing the refactoring code that I mentioned, and I've started with this HUD class. Now, initially this was just the clock, the score, and the end of level text, which I've now kind of put into an enum just to make that a little bit cleaner. And that was all working fine until I've tried to add the nightmare meter. Now, the problem that I've got is that this has kind of exposed a flaw in my logic. So currently the nightmare system is now this new class which is managing all of the aspects of the nightmare in the city. So all of this was originally in the game class. But I've got this one line here which exposes a problem. So what this is saying is, have we reached the threshold of the city? In other words, has the player reached the point where the nightmare is too high, the meter's full, and therefore it should be game over? And this is the way that I previously determined it. I was literally saying to the nightmare meter, are you full up? And the problem with that is that the nightmare meter class it's just a graphical class. It shouldn't have any knowledge of whether the player has finished the game, whether he's lost the game, whether the city is full, right? So really, I think this is, for a start, the nightmare meter itself. This should probably be abstracted out into something a bit more generic, such as a threat meter. And if I run the game, I can't actually run it in the code now because I've broken it, but if I just double click the exe, if you just wait for this to lighten up a little bit, but there are exactly 24 ticks in this particular meter. And so the way that I was running that line of code in there, I come back to this, it was basically saying this is full on the nightmare meter. The is full is the number of ticks currently displayed at the max ticks. And so that's asking this, have you finished drawing yourself? And of course that's wrong, because I want to separate out my game logic from the rendering of it. If I decide to change that meter and put, I don't know, 30 ticks in it, I don't want to have to rewrite my game logic. So this is another example of where I've started off on the right idea. Okay, let's put the nightmare meter in its own class. But then I'm still kind of getting a bit muddled as to what goes where. So I think this is going to be like an ongoing sort of battle that I have. And I think really this, I don't know if I just said this, I think this needs to be abstracted out into something a little bit more generic, into more of a threat meter, which is then becomes like a component that I could use in another game. But then again, this is where I'm starting to think I need some kind of UI system. So I need things like a component which is to draw a threat meter on the screen, and then you just give it a graphic to use. All right, this is the texture you're going to use, this is your min, your max, whatever. And then have something that's a bit more generic. So I'm not going to do that yet until I get to a point where I know I need it in another game. But certainly for here, this, I need to be taking that out, and this should be kind of abstracting it in a different way. I've finished doing that refactoring now. So what I've got is something a lot cleaner. So in my update of my main game, I'm really just querying the system. So if everything is normalized basically, which means it's a value between 0 and 1. So if something is a level of 1, that means it's at its max. So I've got this for both the HUD itself and then the nightmare system. So what I'm just basically saying here is that I set the HUD to be whatever the nightmare system is, and it just works out itself. It just works out its own graphical thing in here. So it's all kind of separated. And also in my nightmare system, currently I can tweak these values here, and this is something that I'm going to have to change next for the for doing the levels. So this is the next part I want to work on now, is actually changing, not changing the way the levels work, but allowing myself to be able to load in multiple levels and have different settings for them. So what I've set here is I've now got a nightmare factor, and what this means is what percentage of the city needs to be having a nightmare for the threshold to be reached. So here 0.8, that means 80%. So there we go, just hit it. So it's only when, so you can see you've got a couple of empty windows there, there's one down here, so it has to be quite full before it will actually sort of lose the game. But if I was to bring that lower, which I could do on a harder level, then I'm only going to need 50% of the buildings full to be able to lose the game. But this will still work in the same way. So this is going to show this coming full up now much more quickly. So I'm only going to need 12 of those buildings to fill up. There we go, before the game ends. But this is the kind of stuff now that I need to be setting in the level, and that means I need to go back to this code. So this is something that I talked about in an earlier video where I had some copy and paste in here. So this particular file, this specifies the 5 buildings that appear in the first level, but they are all either house 1, 2 or 3, and this is duplicated. This is copy and paste. This is literally house 3 here is copy and pasted from house 3 up here. What I want instead now is to have 2 different files. So one of them should just be the definition of a building. This is what house 1 is. This is where the windows are. This is what it's called. This is what house 2 is. This is what house 3 is. And then I need to have a level, which is, what is this level made up of? So it's going to have these buildings. It's going to have house 1, 2, 3, 1, 3, 2, well, however I've got it. And then it also needs to have those kinds of values that I'm currently hard coded in my nightmare system. That needs to be in that file. So I can say in that particular level, how quickly are going to be respawning nightmares, how difficult is it going to be, you know, how long are they going to last, what is the threshold to lose the level, and so on. So I need to be kind of like, again, separating out of those things, and that means also it allows me to get rid of this duplication that was bothering me. If I only ever had one level, I could just quit the game here. I could just say this is it, it's done, it works, and just have that one level, and then this would be fine. But because I want to just go that little extra step and have a concept of different levels, which is something I haven't done before, this is going to now eliminate that problem. So that's going to be my next task, to then rework this kind of whole loading system so that it can cope with different levels. And then it also means that I'm going to have a way of advancing through the levels and keeping track of what level we're on, and keeping track of the scoring going across the levels. Obviously, I don't want the scores to start off at 0 at the new level. So there's going to be quite a bit of work to do there to get the kind of the level system implemented. I realise this video is getting quite long, so I'll try and keep it fairly brief. But I've made quite a bit of progress now with the level stuff. So the buildings file hasn't really changed, apart from the fact that there is now only one definition for each building. As you can see, I haven't put in the windows yet for the others, but I've got now a way of testing that. And then I've now got a levels file. So ID 0 here, this is just the one that I'm using for testing, so I'm not dynamically loading different levels at the moment, so I'm not kind of progressing from one to the other. But this ID 1, this is the level as I've had it in the game so far, and then 2 and 3 I will test those out later. So really all that's really changed in here is I've really compacted down the loading of the data. This is using a link to make this a little bit more compact and more readable. But the main thing here is just loading the level and then just passing to the nightmare system the details of it. So now the nightmare system is getting a spawn rate and the max factor as set up in here, rather than sort of hard coding it into here. So everything is kind of becoming more and more simplified. So if I just load this up now, I've just toned down the darkness a little bit so I could see it. So all I've got in here is a single house, which is house 4, and my blank house. So that is over here, ID 0. So I can change this to whatever I want. So I can put in house 1, I can put in, like, you know, house 5, whatever. So this isn't going to actually do anything because there are no windows defined in house 4. So it's not going to do anything, it's not going to progress. But now that I've put house 1 in there, it will now give me a single house. I'm probably going to lose the game very, very quickly because it only needs to have that third one. Was it? No, 4. There we go, 4. And then it dies. So what I could do in here is I could just put a couple more of them. Actually, I could just take that one out. So if I take out house 1 and just have house 5, then I can just sit there and look at it. So now the next thing I need to do is to start setting up the windows for all the other houses, and then setting up what I want my levels to look like. So this allows me to at least build and test a level in its entirety, and then I'll have to work in the system to, once they complete a level, to then move on, load the next one, and so on. So I'm getting there. Okay, I'm excited. We have 3 levels in the game working. And so now I'm just basically going to play it to show you. So I've got it massively speeded up, so it's going to complete a level in about 10-15 seconds. So I'm just going to try and score a few points before it does. Because I suck at the game, obviously. Oh, there we go. So it's 6 AM, the clock has stopped. So next level, press enter, and now this scene is going to change. So while I'm... Oh, it carries on doing the sound. There's a bug. Okay, I'll fix that. So now we're on the next level. So this time we've got bigger buildings. So these are houses 4, 5 and 6 or something. I really should change the colours. I don't play this game properly. And I tend to play the whole game on one angle. There we go. So next level. So this is the third and final level now. This massive house in the middle is an absolute beast. It's got 30 buildings in it, which is more than the entire first level put together. Oh God. There. So now you win. Yay. So it would be nice. I still need to do quite a lot more with it, but I've got a basic structure there. So I need to tweak some things. I mean, the way this doesn't look too great. You can't really see the colours properly. when you get to the end of the game. It would be nice to have something with the scoring. There is still no visual feedback when you actually soothe a nightmare. And yeah, oh, I wonder if I can... Oh, you can't do the charge sound. But yeah, you can do that. So still a few little bugs. So there's still lots of polish to be done. But as far as features are concerned, I would say this was feature complete. So I'm going to end this video here. Apologies, it's been quite a long one. So the next one should be the final one for this game, where I'm just going to add as many finishing touches as I've got time for before I really get bored and want to move on to the next game. So thank you very much for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.